The man just took a simple shower. Strange things happened. His shadow seemed to be summoned by some force. It slowly detached from his body. With a soft thud, it fell to the ground, as if it had come to life on its own. Looking at the shadow that had separated from his body, the man suddenly had an idea. A mischievous smile curled at the corner of his mouth. He tentatively issued an order: sing, dance, rap, and play basketball for me. No sooner had he finished speaking, the shadow immediately began to dance. Its movements were fluid. It had impeccable rhythm, as if it were a professional dancer who had rehearsed countless times. The man's eyes lit up. He was overjoyed. Then he shouted, "Fill my final exam paper with perfect answers." The shadow hesitated for a moment. Then it picked up a pen and started writing furiously on the exam paper. Its handwriting was neat and beautiful. Before long, the paper was filled with answers. A man, seized by a fit of playfulness, wondered what else the shadow was capable of. Then he asked the shadow to do a push, up and see. But who would have thought that as soon as he finished speaking, the shadow seemed to have its support withdrawn, and with a poof, it dissolved into the floor, leaving the man standing there in utter astonishment. The next morning, the man was still immersed in a beautiful dream. In his dream, a fitness coach and sexy maids surrounded him. He held a paintbrush tightly in his hand, mumbling, "Give me a pen, I can still draw." Suddenly, a rapid series of knocks broke the tranquility. The man, still half asleep, got up to answer the door. He found that the visitor was his childhood friend and devoted fan, Lu Yao Yao. Lu Yao Yao's eyes sparkled, and she excitedly said, "Zhongyu, I saw on the platform yesterday that you said you're starting a new series. Let me get in through the back door so I can check out the character designs first." Before the man could respond, there was a huge bang from behind him. His door, which he had closed casually, shattered into pieces. Lu Yao Yao was so frightened that her face went pale, and she cried out in alarm, "Zhongyu, what the hell are you doing? No access means no access. Why are you slamming the door?" The man himself was dumbfounded. He looked at his own hands in disbelief. Was this really the same person who struggled to carry a bucket of water? At that moment, Lu Yao Yao also noticed the change in him. Her gaze fell on his physique. Her eyes grew wider and wider, and her mouth formed an O. In disbelief, she rushed over and yanked his shirt open. Upon seeing his 8-pack abs, her cheeks instantly turned bright red. She said, half jokingly, "What on earth did you do to yourself? Surely you haven't been taking some kind of pills in secret?" While reaching out to grab him, the man quickly denied, "No way, I've just been working out recently." But Lu Yao Yao simply didn't believe him. She quickly took out a wristband, and with a click, snapped it onto his wrist, saying seriously, "Don't move. This is an instrument to measure your pollution level, whether from killing abnormal beings, swallowing foreign substances, or even from developing new grudges, all of which contaminate you. If it accumulates, you'll become lethargic and transformed." The man felt a pang in his heart, but when he thought of the source of his abilities, he figured it should be fine. But in the very next second, a surge of powerful energy suddenly welled up in his chest. The numbers on the device began skyrocketing. The man gritted his teeth, with veins bulging on his forehead, straining to suppress the abnormal energy within him. Fortunately, the energy came quickly and subsided just as fast. The value soon dropped back to zero. Lu Yao Yao then put away her handgun. She warned the man, "Don't eat just any random stuff." After Lu Yao Yao left, the man quickly opened his system to check the status of his shadow. The system's notification sound kept ringing. "Ding! Your shadow is training in the dark realm. Shadow Devour activated. Absorbed shadow points for the first time. Your shadow has grown stronger. Training in progress. Arm strength +1. Shadow Devour in activation. Shadow points +1. The man looked at these prompts, his heart filled with joy. It turned out that his shadow had been training diligently in the dark realm since yesterday. He quickly summoned his shadow, patting its shoulder, and said with a smile, "Good job, kid. I could already feel the results of your training last night. But in order for you to grow even faster, today, I'll push you even harder. 1,000 push-ups for your whole body. 1 hour of plank hold. 0.1 hour of one-finger handstand. Russian push-ups. 1,000 human flag exercises each. And 10,000 pistol squats. Hurry up and do them for me." Meanwhile, Lu Yao Yao did not leave immediately. She stood at the doorway, listening in on the sounds inside by pressing her ear to the door. After a long while, she finally heaved a long sigh of relief, muttering to herself, "This guy really is training, it seems." Looks like I was overthinking it, you brat. You made everyone so worried. And then you went home to read your big bearded comics. Days passed by one after another, and the man could clearly feel himself growing stronger. His body was filled with power, and he felt no fatigue, although this method of getting stronger was a bit of a shortcut. But looking at his muscular physique in the mirror, he felt a deep sense of satisfaction. But very soon, he encountered a new problem. After so many days had passed, his shadow points were still a pitiful 8 at this rate. When would he ever reach 10 points to unlock the persona? The man pondered, and thought that shadow points could probably only be obtained in the Dark Realm. Maybe if he entered the Dark Realm himself, he could level up faster. With that thought, he hesitated no longer. He decisively activated his shadow eye, and in an instant, he felt as if he were falling into a dark vortex. His body spun uncontrollably. When he opened his eyes again, he found himself in a place both strange and familiar. It looked exactly like his room, but it exuded an indescribable eeriness. He cautiously made his way onto the street, scanning his surroundings. He discovered that aside from no one being there, this place was an exact replica of the real world. Just then, a dark shadow suddenly darted out from a corner. It moved at an incredible speed, and in the blink of an eye, it was right before him. The man instinctively shouted, "Shadow, you're here. How's the training going?" But when he saw the true form of the dark figure, he was instantly terrified, his face turning pale. It wasn't his shadow at all, but clearly a gaping blooded maw filled with sharp fangs. A monster swung a gleaming scythe at him. The man stared in horror with wide-open eyes and scrambled to dodge the attack. The monster let out a piercing, eerie shriek and charged at him again. The man bolted, running as fast as he could, while shouting, "Help!" Fortunately, at the critical moment, he activated his shadow eye, and in a hasty, awkward manner, retreated back, though he narrowly escaped disaster. His backside was still slashed by the monster's scythe, causing him to grimace in pain. From then on, the man frequently entered the Dark Realm with weapons to battle monsters. But every time, he ended up failing. The wounds on his backside kept multiplying, and the scars grew larger. When Lu Yao found out he was injured, she came over to apply some medicine for him. Looking at the wounds on his backside, she was full of suspicion, wondering, how on earth did you get hurt? Surely you weren't out doing something naughty, were you? But the man wore a proud smile, laughing as he said, "You just don't understand. Scars are a man's badges of honor." Lu Yao gave him a withering look and slapped his injured backside. She said irritably, "Is that so? I've never heard of anyone putting their badges on their buttocks." The man cried out in pain, ouch. Ouch, ouch, ouch. Take it easy." After their playful scuffle, the atmosphere gradually turned somber. The man remembered that the martial exam was only a month away. So he asked Lu Yao, with the martial exam just a month away, "What are you planning to do?" Lu Yao's eyes instantly grew dim. She lowered her head and softly said, "Actually, I don't really want to take the martial exam. My dream since childhood has always been music." But now, the man's heart stirred. He guessed, is it because Uncle Lu disapproves? After all, he's a high-ranking official in the night patrol, and he wants you to carry on the family business normally. Lu Yao shook her head, her eyes even more forlorn. "That has nothing to do with you. It's just that the policy has changed. Starting this year, anyone who meets the qualifications must take the martial exam and enroll in the extraordinary category." The man was startled. He realized that things seemed more serious than he had imagined. It seems that the night patrol is in big trouble. Doesn't that mean I too must take the martial exam? But he was still not sure if his abilities qualified him as extraordinary. If during the assessment they mistake me for an abnormal being, I could be executed on the spot. Lu Yao got up, preparing to leave. The man quickly called out, "Hey, wait. You must have some basic knowledge about extraordinary beings and abnormal beings at home, right? Can I take a look?" Lu Yao looked at him quizzically. "What do you need those for? Are you planning to take the martial exam as well? Or do you have some unspeakable secret?" The man panicked. He hurriedly explained, "How could that be? Didn't you just say that the martial exam is mandatory this year? What if I am exceptionally gifted and so?" The man followed Lu Yao to her home. Lu Yao casually tossed him a pair of VR goggles, saying, "Everything you want to know is in there. Watch it yourself." The man put on the goggles and instantly felt himself being sucked into a vortex of energy. A dark and mysterious space appeared before his eyes, accompanied by a mechanical voice saying, "The abyss is an unknown realm, and it is the source of the great catastrophe. It is here that abnormal beings are born. They brutally slaughter each other and ceaselessly devour the human world. In the interstice between the world and the abyss, there exists an independent space known as the dark side. Before the abyssal fissure opens, abnormal beings often infiltrate reality through the dark side. Even though the entry and exit points are tightly controlled by the night patrol, there are still a few that slip through. The dark side resets itself every month, replicating the scenes of our real world. And at that time, the number of abnormal beings increases dramatically. Considering that the dark side weakens human combat abilities, it is not recommended for strong beings of tier 4 or above to enter. The dark side is laden with pollution, and prolonged exposure will turn humans into abnormal beings. The man, upon hearing this, felt a surge of perplexity and wonder. When I activated my shadow eye to enter the dark side before, I felt no discomfort at all. Before he could figure it out, the system continued. If you want to fight abnormal beings, you must master a power that can match theirs and become extraordinary. But ordinary people do not know that extraordinary beings are nothing more than abnormal beings with human bodies. They are constantly fighting against the pollution-induced transformation, and even after death, there is a high probability they will be transformed into abnormal beings. Therefore, as an extraordinary being yourself, when you realize that you cannot survive, please expend your last bit of strength before you die. The man, upon hearing this, felt a shiver run down his spine. Suddenly, everything went pitch black before his eyes. Frightened, he quickly took off his goggles. Lu Yao Yao, seeing his state, asked with concern, "What's wrong?" The man forced himself to sound calm and said, "It's nothing. I've just been in VR for too long. My neck is a bit sore. Come over here and give me a shoulder massage." Lu Yao Yu's face turned dark as she said, "Do you have any guts to say that again?" The man quickly tried to placate her, saying, "How about the 3 original panels of the new comic? They're Ultra HD. Is that okay?" Only then did Lu Yao Yao smile in satisfaction. She suddenly appeared behind him while giving him a shoulder massage, and discovered that his shoulders were surprisingly firm. She couldn't help but tease. The little brat from back then has now become a fitness guru. Huh, let me see how many ABS you have now. With that, she ran to the front and lifted his shirt, and lovingly caressed his ABS, unable to let go. Just then, the door suddenly opened. Lu Nanfeng walked in, looking extremely displeased. Seeing this scene, Lu Nanfeng's face turned red with anger. At the dining table, he chewed his food with a clattering sound, with a look as if he wanted to tear the man limb from limb. Lu Yao Yao quickly served Lu Nanfeng a piece of chicken, and weakly said, "Dad, you've misunderstood. The two of us are really just friends." Lu Nanfeng snorted coldly, "I've misunderstood. Do you take me for a fool?" Lu Yao Yao was both embarrassed and angry, and shouted at the man, "Zhongyu, are you speechless? Hurry up and say something." The man smiled awkwardly and solemnly raised his cup. "Dad, no, I mean Uncle Lu, Uncle Lu. Everything is in the alcohol. I drank it all. Do as you please." After saying that, he downed the juice in one gulp. Lu Nanfeng's veins bulged with anger, and he violently flipped the table over. He shouted, "You brat, today, the two of us will have none left. Where is my knife?" Lu Yao Yao quickly stepped forward to stop him. "Dad, calm down. You really misunderstood." After a while, Lu Nanfeng finally calmed down and reluctantly believed their explanation. Suddenly, he said sternly to the man, "Zizhang, do you know why the government doesn't allow ordinary people to come into contact with the world of the extraordinary? Because human hearts can harbor anomalies that spontaneously generate evil, and not everyone has strong enough willpower. Even if just a tiny crack appears in one's heart, it could provide an opportunity for abnormal beings to take hold. That's why the government arranges the martial exam. Only those whose bodies and wills meet the standards have the chance to enter the world of the extraordinary. Even the powerful extraordinary beings every year, some lose control and turn into abnormal beings. Therefore, until you are certain of your own strength, I do not advise you to delve into these matters. Do you understand?" A slight smile curved on the man's lips as he replied, "Uncle Lu, I know you're doing this for my own good, but isn't the martial exam going to be unified this year? No human can continue to avoid it at that moment. Lu Nanfang's phone started ringing on the other end. An urgent voice from the root team said, "There is an urgent mission in the shadow layer." Lu Nanfang's face changed immediately, and he quickly got up and walked out the door. Before leaving, he glared at the man. "You to behave yourselves at home, or I'll break your teeth if I catch you again." The man patted his chest and said with righteous confidence, "Uncle Lu, rest assured, we both promise not to do anything outrageous again." Lu Yao heard this and immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. "You really can't speak properly, can you? We haven't done anything wrong before, have we?" After leaving Lu Yao's house, the man went to the supermarket to buy some daily necessities, and then walked home slowly. There was only 1 month left until school started. He knew that the training effect of his shadow was growing weaker, and that he needed to gain more combat experience. Moreover, he could feel that the world was about to undergo a drastic transformation. Thinking of this, he gritted his teeth, activated his shadow eye, ready to re-enter the dark realm to fight that abnormal being. No sooner had he entered the dark realm than the sound of scattered footsteps reached him from ahead. Soon, a man staggered out of an alley. The man looked closely and found that it was Ma Hei Oxiang from the same building. He saw that Ma Hei Oxiang was covered in scars, his clothes tattered, and blood continuously oozing from his wounds. The blood bar above his head was down to just 14, and he looked like he could collapse at any moment. The man instinctively took a step back, putting some distance between them, and asked in surprise, "Aren't you Ma Hei Oxiang from the same building as me? Why are you here?" Ma Hei Oxiang was already extremely weak. Upon hearing the man's voice, he mustered his last bit of strength, and with a thud, fell to the ground. It became nearly impossible for him to speak. At that moment, a dark shadow darted out from a nearby corner. The man looked closely, and it was the same abnormal being he had clashed with several times before, and in the corner, there were 2 children clinging to each other tightly, their faces full of terror, with tears welling up in their eyes. A pang of fear gripped the man's heart. He knew that big trouble was coming. It turned out that Ma Hei Oxiang was an administrative staff member of the night patrol. Today, it happened to be his turn on the night shift. He was alone, stationed near the dark realm fissure. Suddenly, a child's cry for help came from ahead. He looked carefully and saw 2 children being dragged into the dark realm by an invisible giant hand. Ma Hei Oxiang's heart pounded with alarm. Usually, abnormal beings escape from the dark realm to wreak havoc in reality, and he had never heard of anyone being pulled into the dark realm. But at that moment, he didn't have time to think further. The 2 children were on the verge of being dragged in. Without a moment's hesitation, he dashed forward in a single bound, grasping their hands tightly, and shouted loudly, "Don't be afraid, I'm your big brother." But the force on the other side was simply too strong. Ma Hei Oxiang simply could not hold it back, and was immediately dragged in along with them. 438. Ma Hei Oxiang's heart was filled with despair. He thought to himself, "This is really bad now. Damn it, I'm just an administrative clerk. The little combat skills I learned during the martial exam have long been handed back to the teacher. And besides, I didn't bring any anti-pollution gear or weapons. Isn't this just a death sentence? The fissure has already vanished? Now, I can only send out a distress signal and wait for rescue." Ma Hei Oxiang gritted his teeth against the pain, and handed his only signal device to the children. He gently said, "Kids, don't cry. This watch can temporarily shield you from the pollution. Big brother has to take care of something, and I'll bring you home in a little while." At that moment, the abnormal being swung its scythe wildly and viciously lunged at Ma Hei Oxiang. Ma Hei Oxiang's eyes narrowed, and he raised his foot, forcefully kicking the scythe away, then lured the abnormal being to an open space nearby. He carefully observed the shape of the abnormal being and silently cursed inwardly. "It has 4 eyes and walks on all 4s in a bestial form. It appears to be just a tier 1, mid-level scum. Any combat student in college could easily kill it. But for someone as unprepared as I am now, it might very well be a fight for survival." Ma Hei Oxiang gritted his teeth. As a surge of black energy rapidly gathered into his fist, he suddenly threw a powerful punch, shouting, "Blind them! This is my abnormal ability as a super-powered being. Each time I use it, it intensifies the pollution within me. But right now, I can't afford to worry about that." However, the abnormal being quickly adapted to the blinding effect, and in the blink of an eye, appeared in front of Ma Hei Oxiang. There was only the sound of a loud boom as it slammed into Ma Hei Oxiang, directly denting his chest. Mahei Oxiang's face turned as white as paper in an instant, and a mouthful of blood spurted from his mouth. He was filled with defiance inside. He knew that today, he probably wouldn't survive. But the only thing he could do now was to buy some time, as long as he could hold on until the other members of the night patrol arrived. The two children would be saved, but before he could recover his senses, the abnormal being's scythe pierced his shoulder once again. The excruciating pain caused Mahei Oxiang's vision to go black. A bitter smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, as if to say, "Is this it for me?" He remembered when he was 15, witnessing his relatives die at the hands of abnormal beings. At 18, he chose a non-examination path for his spirit, and at the end of his sophomore year at 20, he was forcibly expelled from the combat class. At 21, he joined the night patrol as an administrative staff member, and now, it had been 4 years. In these 4 years, he gradually realized that in the war between humans and abnormal beings, it was nothing like the peace and serenity that had been advertised. There was only constant retreat. When dark clouds completely obscured the sunlight, who could see hope then? Thinking of this, Mahei Oxiang suddenly grinned bitterly and pulled out a blue pill from his pocket. Without hesitation, he swallowed it. In the next second, ominous black markings began to spread, rapidly creeping all over his body. A ferocious expression appeared on his face. He roared, "Damn it! Smash them! Round 2 has begun!" And so, the pace of their battle quickened more and more. Their figures flashed swiftly in the darkness. Ordinary people wouldn't even be able to catch their movements, and they didn't know how many rounds had passed. Finally, Mahei Oxiang couldn't hold on any longer, and collapsed weakly onto the ground. His eyes could no longer see, and his consciousness gradually faded. He was filled with self-reproach. So it was really my own power turning against me. After all, 523. I'm so weak. I can't even win against a pill. This is damned. But just then, a young voice came from not far away. "You little brat, dangling at the entrance of the neighborhood, coming here to show off."